It's 2 p.m. and you're staring at a screen that isn't making sense anymore. Your third coffee has gone cold. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you're doing the math on whether you could get away with 20 minutes, eyes closed, door shut, phone face down. You've felt this exact drag 100 times, and somewhere along the way, you probably picked up an idea about it, that this is a modern problem, that ancient humans didn't have this, that they lived closer to nature, slept when the sun told them to, woke up rested, and never once needed to fight their own body just to get through an afternoon. It's a nice story. You've probably heard a version of it, that before electric light, people slept in 2 shifts through the night, a first sleep and a second sleep, with an hour or 2 of quiet wakefulness in between to think, talk, or just lie there in the dark. A historian named A. Roger E. Kirch found this pattern all over pre-industrial European records, court documents, diaries, medical texts, casually mentioning the time between the sleeps, like everyone knew what it meant. It's a real finding. It's also, for a long time, the whole story people told themselves about how humans used to sleep before clocks ruined everything. But that record comes from writing, from people who could read and write, in one part of the world, in a few centuries before gas lamps. It's not the same as watching how humans actually sleep when nothing about their world has changed in tens of thousands of years. So a neuroscientist named Jerome Siegel, working with researcher Gandhi Yetish, decided to go find out. They didn't dig through old diaries. They went to the Hadza in Tanzania, the San in Namibia, and the Tsimane in Bolivia. 3 hunter-gatherer and forager-farmer societies with no electricity, no artificial light, nothing between them and the actual sky. They strapped small watch-like sensors on real people and just measured what happened, night after night, season after season. And what they found breaks the nice story in half. These groups didn't sleep in 2 neat shifts. There was no clean first sleep, second sleep pattern showing up in the data. And they didn't sleep more than you do either. On average, a little under 6.5 hours a night. Less than the 8 hours you've been told you're failing to get. Less than what most sleep advice assumes is the bare minimum for a functioning human being. And naps? They almost never happened. Across 210 recorded winter days, the data showed 0 afternoon naps. Across 364 summer days, 10. About 3% of the time, and even then, usually short. Not a daily ritual, barely a footnote. Ask a Tsimane or San person to explain insomnia, and researchers found they genuinely struggle to understand the concept. Not because there's a word for it they're withholding, but because there doesn't seem to be a word for it at all in either language. Not because they refuse naps out of some kind of ancient discipline, because the problem you're picturing right now, at 2 p.m., with your eyes fighting to stay open. That problem barely seems to exist for them at all. So here's the actual question worth sitting with. If they slept less than you, and they didn't nap to make up the difference, why weren't they dragging through their afternoons the way you are right now? The answer isn't that they needed less sleep. It's that almost nothing about their sleep was fighting itself. Look at when they actually fell asleep. Not at sunset, usually more than 3 hours after it. Sleep onset tracked the temperature dropping, not the light disappearing. And they woke up, not at sunrise exactly, but right around the coldest point of the night, just before dawn, consistently, night after night. Even when bedtime shifted around by an hour or more, their wake-up time was locked in place by their own biology. Their fall-asleep time was allowed to drift. That's backwards from how you probably think about it. You assume the hard part is getting yourself to sleep on schedule, and the wake-up is whatever the alarm decides. For them, the body picked the ending. The environment picked the beginning. That's the piece modern sleep science keeps circling back to. It's not really about hitting some magic number of hours. It's about how regular and how undisturbed the signal is that tells your body when night has actually started and when it's actually over. A falling temperature in a dark room is one of the oldest, clearest versions of that signal that a human nervous system has ever known. It's been running that exact circuit for longer than there's been a written word for insomnia to describe. And that signal runs both ends of the day, not just the night. Real daylight is dramatically brighter than almost anything you sit under indoors. Even a well-lit office is a fraction of the intensity of an overcast sky. A body that spends its daylight hours out under the real thing gets a sharp, unambiguous "this is day" signal, which makes the "this is night" signal that follows it that much stronger and easier to fall into. A body that spends its daylight hours under dim indoor light gets a blurrier version of both ends. Daytime that's not quite bright enough to feel fully like day, and nighttime lighting that's not quite dark enough to feel fully like night. The contrast is the cue. Flatten it, and the whole system has less to work with. Now think about what's actually sitting between you and that signal. A phone screen at 11 p.m., pushing blue light straight into the part of your brain that's supposed to be reading darkness as "start winding down." A bedroom that never gets properly cold because the thermostat holds it flat all night. An alarm that yanks you out of sleep at a different time on Saturday than it does on Tuesday. So your body is essentially living in 2 time zones a week, apart from each other. Something sleep researchers now just call social jet lag. And underneath all of it, the coffee, which doesn't actually give you energy so much as it blocks your brain from noticing the tiredness chemical that's already built up. It doesn't fix the 2 p.m. drop, it just mutes the alarm telling you it happened. None of that existed for the Hadza, the San, or the Tsimane. Their wake time didn't need defending. It defended itself. And there's a second piece to this, less about biology and more about the shape of the day itself. An anthropologist named James Tsimane has spent years studying how hunter-gatherer societies actually use their time, and one thing that shows up again and again is that their days weren't carved into rigid blocks the way yours is. There was no fixed shift, no meeting that starts the second the clock hits a certain number, no lunch hour engineered to fit between 2 other scheduled things. If energy dipped in the middle of the day, there wasn't a productivity problem to solve. There was just shade, a slower task, a quieter stretch, absorbed into whatever the day already was. Think about what that actually removes. You don't just get tired at 2 p.m. You get tired at 2 p.m. while sitting under fluorescent light, mid-task, with 3 more scheduled hours standing between you and permission to stop. The dip in your body is real and biological. The part where it becomes a crisis is entirely the schedule's doing. A hunter-gatherer feeling that exact same afternoon, dip just slowed down for a bit. No door to shut. No meeting to sit through anyway. No guilt about it either, because there was no version of productivity being measured against the clock in the first place. The nap you're fantasizing about right now isn't really a biological necessity showing up out of nowhere. It's what a normal, everyday dip in alertness looks like once you've boxed a day into hours that don't bend around it, which maybe reframes the coffee, and the cold desk, and the door you were thinking about shutting for 20 minutes. That feeling isn't a flaw in you that ancient humans somehow evolved past. It's what happens when a 300,000-year-old body, still built to read falling temperature and real darkness as its cue to power down, gets handed blue light at midnight. A flat temperature bedroom, a Tuesday alarm that doesn't match Saturdays, and a lunch built more for convenience than blood sugar. Your ancestors weren't running on some superior version of willpower. They just never had to override the signal in the first place. You probably can't rebuild a Hadza night in the middle of a city, but the parts of it that mattered weren't complicated, cool, dark, and consistent, with a wake-up time your body could actually count on. That's not a lesson about discipline. It's closer to remembering what your own body has been asking for the entire time, long before anyone needed a word for not being able to give it that.